Hey all, this program is rated M for Mature, presenting Master and Apprentice Photography.
This is our first podcast, Master and Apprentice Podcast. Apparently it's a Star Wars reference. I don't get it. Marlon says it's funny. Let's go. So, Marlon, tell me a bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm a photographer from Montreal, Canada. I specialize in people photography, so anything ranging from portraits, advertisement, weddings, events, documentary type stuff. Anything involving people is generally what I do. I've been photographing professionally for about 14 years now. Running my own company for just about a decade.
Very cool. So I am Joe. I have zero photography experience, but I have owned a smartphone for like 15 years, so kind of on the same level as you.
Yeah, you're on your way.
So one thing I wanted to talk about was how we got here to this, recording this podcast, basically.
Sure.
It started with the tweet where you were asking somebody to explain something on TikTok to you.
Yeah, my tweet was, I need a Gen Z person to explain FYP hashtag for your page on TikTok. What's the point of a hashtag if it's on every single post? It's like the dickheads that put hashtag photo on Instagram photos. So yeah, as a 35-year-old stuck in quarantine, I decided to hop on the bandwagon and download TikTok. And I'm really good at picking out the little details that enrage me that probably should have no effect on my life, but somehow.
And then I chose to reply to you with a joke saying, somebody explain TikTok to me. And it escalated a little after that.
Yeah, doesn't take a lot for me to rant. So I think asking me, discussing about TikTok ended up with us discussing social media and its place in our lives. And I usually use it for political ranting, which is probably the most inefficient use of my time.
And so I said, let's start a podcast.
And here we are, podcasting.
Yeah. Originally, the podcast was supposed to be us making fun of social media. And then an hour before we decided to record it, you go, hey, I got a lot of stuff to talk about photography. And I go, I'm interested to hear that. And now here we are.
Yeah.
A photography podcast.
Yeah. I do think it probably in the long run, it's smarter to talk about something I'm actually an expert in and something you're actually interested in, rather than just talking about Twitter. And then like 3 weeks later, we just come to the conclusion that like, yep, Twitter sucks.
Yeah, but I'm sure if we talked about social media and had our little hot takes on it, I'm sure we'd get a lot more comments. Not good ones, but a lot more.
Yeah. I mean, photography is very important to many people's lives, even if they don't realize how much it is. And not just professional photography, but especially with proliferation of smart devices everywhere. We're always taking photos. We're always looking at photos. We're always being marketed to with photos. I don't think we even realize how many photos we see a day. It could be hundreds or thousands.
Very true. So I'm going to get started with the first question that you probably get asked a lot. What camera should I buy?
So I'm asked this question multiple times a week through my Instagram. I always get new photographers or people interested in stepping up their photography to a professional level. And their first question is always like, oh, what should I buy? Like, what do I need? It's never like, how do I take a better picture? Or like, this is where I am now. How do I improve this? So yeah, they're never asking, how can I improve my photography? It's always like, what do I need to buy to improve my photography? And there are tons of dedicated YouTube channels and blogs and everything that tell you what type of camera you should buy, what's so good about this, what's great about that. And really, and this pisses everyone off because my answer is always like, get the cheapest camera you can afford that allows you, to use manual control, has a high enough resolution for your computer, which is every camera now has a high enough resolution. The iPhone has a high enough resolution to like print 8x10. So basically, and this was a famous saying by another photographer, Chase Jarvis, and he said like the best camera is whatever you have on you, and like whatever you can use to make images is you can use it for professional use. There's people that use iPhones for advertising. There's people that use $10,000 cameras to take pictures of like insects in their front yard. So like the world of photography is so big, and there's a place for every single camera, and anyone with the drive to make good images can do it with whatever camera. That being said, the big debate in the photosphere would be mirrorless or DSLR. Now, when we think professional cameras, everyone thinks of like, like the guy with the long lens on like the side of the football field, or, at a concert, with these huge boxy cameras. And then there's a lot like the Sonys are very popular. They're like slimmer, smaller cameras, but you kind of have live view, like kind of as if you're looking at the back of a smartphone as you look through the viewfinder. And I think that's the future of photography. And I really think that if you are getting into photography, you should definitely go mirrorless, just, so you don't have to like purchase another camera further down the line when that becomes the most popular option. I personally use Fujifilm cameras. They're like very retro looking, which I like. Also, like I really like the colors in them. Every camera has their pros and cons. For Fuji, they're compact. They're a bit lighter, and their colors are great. Sony, they're full frame. The resolution is incredible, but like they're a bit more complicated to use. The menus aren't as user friendly. But honestly, like I said, go out, get whatever camera you pick up. It feels good. They're all going to do the same thing in the end.
Now, is photography one of those things where if you want to get better, you can just throw money at it? Or is it a balance of skill versus technology? Or
photography is, I think, the most accessible art form. Anyone can pick up a camera. You can give a camera to a child, and they can be taking images within a few minutes. So whether you need to just throw money at it, it's like if I just picked up a paintbrush and some paint and started painting, I wouldn't say, oh, you know what, I'm really limited. I need to buy a better paintbrush. I need to buy a better canvas. I need to buy better paints. You can give me the most expensive, art instruments in the world. My painting is still going to suck donkey balls.
Okay. So this leads me to my next question. Can I just use my smartphone?
Simple answer, yes, you can. I have a camera app called Halide on my smartphone, on my iPhone 11, and it allows you to take raw images on your smartphone. Well, in this case, my iPhone, which means you can edit them a lot more. And sometimes when I'm just traveling around my family, like I don't have to lug around a camera. I know I have my smartphone, and it's really all about finding good light, finding a good moment, making a good composition. Those are really the three things you need for a good image, and it doesn't matter what camera you have. Like I would rather capture a genuine moment on my smartphone than like have this complicated setup and then just end up with a boring image.
Okay. So what would the limitations be for a smartphone, and when would you want to like upgrade to the next level, you think? Is there any specific like, oh, I need to switch to mirrorless now because I've exceeded, my limitations for this smartphone?
Right. Obviously, like an instrument dedicated to a singular purpose will always be better. Like if you're comparing like an iPhone to like any camera, let's just, for this instance, we'll just say a Canon like Mark One. What's good about a dedicated camera is you can take more photos, like a burst. If you burst photos, you can have more. The resolution in a dedicated camera will always be better, which is important for cropping, printing purposes. The bigger the sensor of the camera, generally the better the image quality is. The less noise and artifacts you'll get. Also, there's something called compression. That's and bokeh. That's when you see like those blurry, creamy backgrounds and like the subject is in focus, which is, something that everyone loves to do, especially when you're first starting out with photography. Like you love having like a wide open lens and just like taking pictures and like making everything blurry in the background. That's when you're like, wow, like I'm really taking professional looking images. And that's like the best way to start like a love of photography. So you can't really do that on a smartphone. You have a portrait mode, which is pretty amazing for a smartphone, but if you ever print it like a large image, you'll definitely see the shortcomings in around the edges of the image. But if you're just want to take images of your friends outside, yes, a smartphone is, or vacation photos, a smartphone can get the job done. If you really want to get into making art with your images, you definitely want your own dedicated camera. It'll just allow you to do more things and have more control over, shutter speed, aperture, ISO, different lens combinations. It's just a lot simpler to use.
So like with a smartphone, basically you point it at your subject, you take the picture, whatever it gives you is what you get. With the camera, you can make it take the picture that you want to get.
Exactly.
So as a parent and also a photographer, if you go to a school recital or any kind of, event for your child, do you pull out the smartphone or do you bring the DSLR?
I bring my iPhone.
Okay.
Just because, like the old adage, like shoes for everyone but the shoemaker's kids. If I'm taking photos, working on photos, editing photos, thinking about photos, planning photo shoots, how many hours a week, the last thing I want to do is like work when I'm outside. And like when I take pictures of my own family, I'm not like, oh, I need to really make the subject look the best or like really capture this moment. Like, no, I'm not getting paid. I just want to remember this moment. Click, great. I have it. Enjoy the moment. Like things like my children's birthdays or holidays. I really enjoy experiencing them for myself because so much of my life is behind the camera anyways. And I enjoy doing that for other people. But when it's my own personal attachment to something going on, I really like to be present with it. So like, yeah, when I'm at holidays and some of my relatives are like, hey Marlon, where's the camera? Why aren't you taking camera? It's like, well, why don't I bring my fucking, receipts in? You can do my taxes.
Wow. That's actually a good perspective I never thought of.
Yeah, everyone expects like my camera to be like on my hip. Like, oh, we're going for a walk. Well, why don't you take your camera to like take pictures? I was like, well, I just had 3 photo shoots yesterday, so maybe I just wanted to like enjoy the sunshine.
Dang, that's a good point because I would think that like if I had a really nice camera, I would have it with me, it'd be in my passenger seat every time I got in the car or something like that. But like you do it for a living, so it's always on your hip when you are working.
Yeah, most of the time I do have a camera in the car somewhere.
Just in case of emergencies, emergency photo shoot.
Yeah, just in case there's an emergency photo shoot. But, like I do enjoy taking pictures, but I don't try to force taking pictures if I don't have to. Like obviously, when it's my job to go there and find a story or find an image, it's like my pleasure to do that. But I'm never like looking for an excuse to do it. Sometimes I do want to get creative and try like different types of photography that I'm not necessarily like good at. I'm not pleased with my performance at a professional level. But it's still fun. Like I've really been enjoying doing fight photography.
Fight photography?
Yeah, boxing, Muay Thai, kickboxing, mixed martial arts. So I do that a lot for a gym called TriStar in Montreal. They have a lot of top UFC fighters and different types of disciplines. I've always been, into martial arts. I train myself.
Not sponsored.
Yeah, not sponsored.
I was like, wait, are you turning this into an ad? What happened? I thought we were doing a podcast.
It's not an ad. Actually, I love it there, but fuck TriStar, so they're not paying me. So
yeah,
exactly. So,
once we get big.
Yeah, exactly. But so anyways, they have a lot of events, so I love doing photos for them. It's a lot of fun, and like because it's not, it's not something like a wedding where like I have to, I have to make sure my work is consistent and up to my own professional standards. When it's like fun for me, I can experiment, and if I do miss something or miss a moment or like miss an exposure, I don't beat myself up for it. It's like a fun sort of like learning thing.
Gotcha. So I guess this segues into what do you usually carry in your bag when you do go on shoots?
Okay. So if it's like a commercial shoot and I'm using a lot of lighting, my bag tends to get a bit more complicated. But that I would say is 25% of my work. Really, what I'm most known for when I work with agencies or my own personal clients that hire me is just natural like lifestyle type photography. That's my favorite to do. It's I find it very authentic, and it always like blows people's minds when they're like, "Oh, you must have so much gear." And I do have a good amount of gear, but not as much as you'd think. Mostly when I show up to a photo shoot, it might just be 2 camera bodies, like a Fujifilm X-T2 and a Fujifilm X Pro 2. So I also have an XH1 that I use, but I'll show up with 2 cameras. Like I always have a third as a backup, but it depends on what the job is, because usually if something happens I can just switch lenses on one body. But so I always show up with 2 bodies, and mostly just a 35 millimeter and a 50 millimeter lens is all I need.
Okay, what about like tripod, stuff like that?
So I hate using tripods. I hate limiting myself. I'm not an I shouldn't say like I'm not like a rambunctious energetic person per se, but on a photo shoot, it's like my mind is racing. And I'm like, this will look cool. This will look cool. We can do this. We can go over there. Like I really try to maximize my space when I'm shooting. I like getting like a variety of different compositions. So I hate locking myself into like one position on a tripod. Obviously, like there are some disciplines, like if you're shooting landscape or nature or products, like a tripod is an absolute must. Like you need it. But if you're really just taking pictures of people and you want things to look natural, like it's totally unnecessary to use a tripod. I don't like it. I don't like it in portrait sessions either, even if I'm doing a headshot, just because people are so unique that, sometimes a difference of an inch or 2 higher, like really changes the mood of a photo. And it's just so mechanical with a tripod. And I really like to just kind of feel it out and go handheld. I just find it's a more authentic experience, and it just adds to the look that I'm known for in my own images.
So a tripod is basically an anchor for you.
Yeah, I find it a hindrance. And obviously everything I talk about in terms of photography is from my experience, which, has been enough up until now. I am a professional. I've won awards. I've shot a few celebrities as well.
Humble brag.
I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that like something's going right in my photography. I'm still surviving. I'm still feeding my family with it. So I'm not just going, like this is what I like. Like this is something my clients like too. Obviously, there are people I know that use a tripod every single shoot. They swear by it. They love it. They hate mirrorless cameras. They only like big DSLRs. Their images are still great. It's great for them. I see them work. I don't know how they do it. I cringe. I think they should be excommunicated from the profession. I think their like images should be destroyed. Their computers just trampled and burned. But they're making a living, so I can't fault them. It just disgusts me in every way, shape, or form.
So you said you've been shooting professionally for 14 years, you said?
Yes.
But you've been actually taking pictures for much longer.
Yes, exactly. So I'm 35, and I got my first DSLR when I was 12 years old. Sorry, it wasn't a DSLR. It was not digital. I got my first SLR when I was 12 years old, and I had my own darkroom in the basement. My first SLR was a Canon Rebel, and I think I would shoot roll after roll of film. My parents would buy me like all these like boxes of film from Costco.
Wow.
Like when they still had black and white 35 millimeter film, Ilford. And I would I would just like take pictures mostly of my 3-year-old brother at the time.
Okay.
And
So all this experience you're talking about is from years and years of experience. It's not just I'm been dabbling for a while. No, you've been doing this for quite some time.
yeah, quite some time. It's been a major part of my life for a while. It was always a hobby of mine. I love taking pictures. I love taking pictures of people. It was a lot of fun. And then in university, so my background is in biology. I was doing a project in the Galapagos Islands, which was really nice. The biology aspect of it was extremely boring, but I used my time on the island. I think I came home back with like 10,000 photos after this like 3-week trip, which actually like sometimes I take 15,000 photos at one wedding, but at that time I wasn't a professional yet, so it was still a lot. And I came back and it was just, you know, I was more passionate about taking the photos than I was about this research project. And then a bunch of them got published in the university newspaper.
Wow.
And I was very proud. It was very like a very cool experience. And then someone I know who is a professional photographer said, "Wow, like I really like your eye. Like, would you like to shoot weddings with me?" And I was just like kind of shocked because I'd never even considered being a wedding photographer or you know, photographing events or even like getting paid to take photos. And I was just like, "Oh, like I have no idea what I'm doing." And he's like, "Yeah, well," he's like, "I know what I'm doing." He's like, "So you just come and do what you want, and if it works, cool." I was like, "Oh, cool." Like there was no pressure.
That's how every job should start. It's like, just come follow me, do what you want to do. If it works out, it works out. Otherwise, go back to school.
Yeah. I wish if it was that easy to be a surgeon, I'd definitely come and give it a shot.
just come in the operating room. If it doesn't work out, you know,
yeah,
go back to
like,
photography.
Listen, this guy has 3 weeks to live tops. So have a tinker around.
see if you got a knack for it.
Yeah, it works out great. I thought I wanted to be a surgeon at one point, and then I played Surgeon Simulator.
And you're like, no, I'm going to stick with that wedding
have
stuff.
Have you ever played that?
I have not.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. No one should let me around human bodies.
Camera bodies only for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So actually, with the discussion of the wedding photography stuff, is there a like hierarchy of like photographers? And if so, where does like a wedding photographer fit on that like hierarchy scale?
So it's pretty
personal opinion.
Yeah, well, every opinion I give is super personal.
Okay.
And it's probably wrong. It's not wrong to me, but like everything I say, like I know when I'm speaking, like I know I've personally read like articles, lots of blogs, lots of, you know, photography sources of people who think the opposite of me in every single like conceivable way. But this is my fucking podcast, so I'm going to say it how I want to say it. In art, photographers are looked down as like the bottom of the barrel.
You press a button, basically, right? Is that what they think?
Yeah, exactly. Like if you're a painter or a sculptor or any type, you know, using any type of visual medium, like they look down at photography. And like kind of understand it because it's like if you're painting a scene, like you are hand making every single detail in that scene. Like everything is in your mind, the lighting, the colors, the composition, like the details that you know choose to add, that you know the ones you choose to leave out. It's like, you know, painting is like might even be like the top of the art world, like, you know, whereas, you know, photography, they're just like, yeah, you're just pressing a button. Obviously there's more to it like that, but like anyone can take a lucky photo and be like, wow, that's a gorgeous photo. No one can make a lucky painting. Maybe that's a good point. The abstract world, but but you can't, like, you know, no one like, oh wow, what a beautiful sculpture. Like, how do you do it? And you're like, I don't know, I just fucked around, saw what happened. It doesn't really happen like that. Whereas like you could posit that you could give a camera to a monkey and, you know, it could run around and end up coming back with some cool shit. So you can't do that with most other art forms.
I mean, people just put GoPros on like cats and dogs and they post them online and they get millions of views.
Right, exactly. And what's fun about photography, especially in a commercial setting, Even though like the end goal of the image isn't so artistic. It's usually to like sell a product you don't really need. But it's fun because it's like very collaborative. You're actually collaborating with your subject. You're not just saying like sit there and don't move, but like, you know, a model is also making art. You know, they're using their body to, you know, tell a story, to show something, convey an emotion. The makeup artist is, you know, doing their thing, you know, to enhance and highlight what they want. There's a stylist, you know, either, you know, decorating the set or, you know, picking the outfit for the model. There's so many different moving parts on in an image that it's hard to like just dismiss it as like pressing a button. Obviously, you know, creating the lighting setup can make or break a photo. Any one of these pieces going wrong can ruin a photo. So it's much more than just like pointing your camera and pressing a button. Obviously, when you're like out of the studio, sometimes it is just pointing the camera at something pretty. Like sometimes you just have a very captivating subject. Like, you know, it could be like one of the stereotypical pictures, or, you know, when people are photographing a beggar somewhere, like a, you know, guy with lots of wrinkles, lots of story in, you know, in the face. And it's just, oh, there's harsh lighting, you know, underexpose it, click. Oh, look at this guy. He has bright eyes, but it's like the wrinkly dark skin. I guess it's art, but, you know, it's also very overdone. So, you know, it can be like, there is beauty in simple images, and it's very, you know, you can find it in any day life if you want. But I think like the difference is like, if you're painting, you actually have to like go out and consider it. Whereas like a photo, you can get lucky, but being a professional photographer isn't about getting lucky. It's about, you know, making consistent work. So if you can make consistent work, you can tell these people to just, you know, fuck off and suck your dick, because I'm making art all the time, bitches. So stop telling me I'm not a fucking artist.
So with all that said, as a wedding photographer, you don't really have a whole lot of control. You're just capturing the moments of other people, right? And
yeah, exactly. It's just
so on the hierarchy.
So yeah, in actual photography, like a wedding photographer is also at like the bottom of the hierarchy. So like I'm at the bottom of like visual arts, and I'm actually at the bottom of my personal visual art, just because it's you know, like if you're a fine art photographer and you're selling to galleries and you're, you know, taking pictures of, you know, rolling landscapes or like a piece of trash on the ground and, you know, telling a story about it, you know, whereas I'm just getting paid a lot of money to like take pictures of happy people looking the best they'll ever look in their life, and like the best clothes they'll ever wear in their life, just having fun with their friend. So it's like easy to, you know, find emotion in story like that. But you know,
but to them it's important.
Of course, 100%. I think it's like for a lot of art, you're trying to make something that appeals to as many people as you can. As when you're covering a wedding, I'm really only trying to make, you know, a select few people happy. Like obviously anyone can appreciate like a beautiful moment between, you know, two people or like a group of people. Let's say if, you know, something funny on the dance floor and everyone's laughing, but really the people who will appreciate it the most are the people, you know, in the photo, or, you know, who have some sort of relationship with the people in the photo. So I'm not trying to, most of the images that I make are not the intended purpose of everyone has to like them. It's like, oh, I hope the people in the photo like really like it. So it's a different kind of way of looking at it. Also, like as a wedding photographer, you end up making, if you're good, you end up making more money than most other photographers. So like they really hate you for it.
Okay, so that's okay. Now I get where it stems from. It's so you're okay. I know I'm gonna piss off a lot of people because I know we're making a photography podcast, and I'm basically I'm not bashing wedding photographers, but like I can see where some people might dislike them. That's all I will say.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, like
you push a button, you get a nice check, and you're not like you said, you're making pictures for select few. You're not going to post them on Instagram and get 1 million likes. You're just making them for the people that are paying you. And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, like
I don't know why I even asked this question on this podcast. Our first episode, I'm already just killing it. I'm like, a good portion of our audience is like, oh my god, you guys suck. Why are you guys bad mouthing wedding photographers?
A good portion of our audience might be like 7 people two of which are my parents, who might be like, yeah, fuck wedding photography. You should have been a surgeon.
Yeah.
You dumb shit.
And I might buy a camera after this, after all this conversation.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But yeah. So, anyways, in terms of helping out my fellow wedding photographers, so it's not just showing up and pressing a button. It is a lot of problem solving. Like, where should I stand to like get the most pleasing composition? You know, how can I pose these people who are like also very nervous?
And one of the things you were saying also is you have an eye for like anticipating what's going to happen, so you can catch the shot that normally people wouldn't have caught.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of things that go into wedding photography, especially, or any type of event coverage that you really can't learn from from a YouTube video or a book. You might be able to learn it from this podcast. Visit my Patreon now.
buy my book.
Where it's like you have to keep an eye on all your surroundings. Like, oh, I see the best man is going to the bar an awful lot. He keeps getting tequila shots. If I keep an eye out on him, he might do something really stupid later on. And then like, oh, okay, he's getting really excited that the song is coming on, let's see what's going to happen here. And then all of a sudden he like, rips his shirt off, buttons flying everywhere. You get that snap because you knew, he was a drunk moron. Boom. Like, you got the shot and everyone's like, wow, I can't believe you captured that. And you can sometimes just get lucky. But, if you're able to keep an eye on these details, you'll find your work will improve a lot.
So that is definitely an interesting take. So you have to be like in tune with people as much as you are with your equipment.
Yeah, exactly. So actual photography settings are okay. I'm gonna sound like a huge douchebag right now. So actual photography like settings in terms of f-stop, shutter speed are like they're beyond my conscious thought right now when I work. They're second nature to me. So I'm not sitting there going like, what I can do it by feel. Sometimes when I'm setting up lighting, like I am a professional. I'll use a light meter to make sure my exposure is good, but I always try to like this game where I try to get it on the first try, like in terms of the exposure settings. And more often than not, I can like, it's like I nail it.
And do you secretly just tell yourself like, I am a god? Yeah,
I do. But it's also like, I probably have some like latent self-esteem issues. So I need to tell myself because I'm like, yes, I got this exposure. And like, someone's like, well, like the photo kind of sucks. And I'm like, well, I got the exposure.
I got on the first try.
They're like, your finger's in the image. I'm like, yeah, the exposure's good, right?
I got on the first try.
It's like, hey, that song sucks. Like, your band sucks. I'm like, my guitar's in tune. I did it by ear. So fuck you.
No apps on my phone. I did it all by myself.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I asked some pretty easy questions, but I have a little of a hardball question here for you.
All right, go for it.
First off, you've used a lot of different cameras, or have you pretty much stuck to the Fujifilm cameras?
No, Fujifilm is actually quite new for me. I switched about 2 years ago. I was working with Canon before then.
Okay. So my question is, actually, this comes from a friend of mine who I said, hey, I need to stump this guy, send something difficult to my way. I understood some of the words in his question, so I'm like, okay, that sounds like it's going to be hard enough. So he wanted me to ask you if there's any difference between Canon and Nikon colors and RAW formats.
Okay, so not a stump question because I'm a fucking professional.
Damn it.
So every camera company has its own color science, and the colors will also come out different. They'll kind of they'll express colors in the images differently. we call these people online that like look at these pictures and like zoom into 400% and like study the different, color differences from pixel to pixel. They're pixel peepers. And it's absolutely fine to do that. Like I think we were talking like before the podcast, like how I suck at guitar, but I have lots of guitar pedals, and like I know lots of differences between them. So there's people that are they're into photography gear. So like they don't care so much of like, oh, do you like this image, as of like, oh, look at the color gradation in the image, like, oh, look at the crispness in the shadows, and you're like, oh, this is a picture of an apple on your kitchen table, and they're like, yeah, but but look at the sharpness, and you're like, oh, okay, cool.
So
and
they admire different things about the picture other than the picture itself.
Yeah. So Canon and Nikon they both do an excellent job at displaying colors. They're known for like more or less realistic colors. Like what you see is what you get. Personally, I find Canon, they're definitely it's like a cooler image, which the yellows aren't as brilliant. The reds aren't as orange. Tends to be like a little bit more blue in the shadow. And these are like super, super subtle details, and it should not influence you buying a camera. I know like me saying that means absolutely nothing, because like every blog is like, this is why it should influence you doing a camera, because when I work with other photographers, I'll have assistants photograph with me. Sometimes they, most often than not, they're not using the same camera brand as me, and like it's my job to make the images look as similar as they can be. Like 100% of my clients would never ever be able to tell like a Canon file from a Nikon file. If you can, great, hats off to you, but no finished image would be ever tell. Personally, like when I edit, like sometimes people like they want their image to start off looking a bit crisper or bluer or whatever. So personally, when it comes to Canon and Nikon, I like the Canon files better, and it's literally based on like me personally. Like I'm pale as shit. I have when you're a pale guy, your skin isn't just like pale; it's kind of like splotchy and pink, and because I find Canon tends to subdue that. Like I just like Canon better, because like I don't like pink splotchiness in photos, whereas like Nikon, the skin is like a bit more I don't want to say like brilliant, it's a bit more vibrant in the oranges, which is pleasing to people with like excellent complexions, but I don't, and I guess I'm a bit selfish, so fuck it. But really, like these are like super subtle differences that as a professional I do notice, but like I won't let it bog me down. Whereas like I use Fujifilm, whereas like the colors are like they look amazing, but like they're not realistic. Like you find like a red door somewhere and you like take a picture of it, and the red is like super fuck you red in the photo, and it's like, oh cool, like because that's how I would have photoshopped it to look. I want everything to like pop and everything. Like I'm not always looking for realism. I just want my images to look good. So like I like Fujifilm because like it kind of like throws all that out the window. It's not even attempting to be realistic. And I was like, the first time I picked it up, I took one click. I was like, oh yeah, this is the camera for me. This is the image I want. In the end, like even if I'm editing like an assistant's Canon or Nikon file, I'm just trying to make it look like my Fujifilm file, which I accomplish. So in the end, it really doesn't matter. Just use the camera you want, and then make the images like make them look however you want after. But everyone has their preference, and like when I'm like, oh yeah, like I do find Canon a bit cool and Nikon a bit, there will be someone on the internet somewhere that's like, this fucking guy doesn't know what he's talking about, because my Nikon tends to, obviously like even in different models, even from different, like the same camera model could be made on like a different factory on like a different day, and like some specs change. So it's all super subjective. These are just my thoughts on it.
And that's what this podcast is all about. It's not about facts, it's about feelings. No, I'm joking.
photography.
So the second question that he wanted me to ask is, he wanted me to ask if the sensor size has anything to do with the depth of field of an image.
Yes, it does. So there's different sensor sizes. Like, whereas a camera phone will have a small sensor, an APS-C sensor, which is like an SLR, but it's not full frame. Will have a smaller sensor. A full frame camera means that it's like the camera. It's 35 millimeter is the size of the camera sensor, exactly the same size as film was back in the day. Like, this is obviously like a generalization, and there's medium format, which is anything bigger than full frame. And the bigger the sensor, the less depth of field you have, which is why like larger sensor cameras tend to have these much more pleasing images. The depth of field is also like the gradation of it is nicer. But like, also that being said, like, lens choice has a big factor in how that works out. There's a lot of physics involved that I don't really need to talk about, just so I can impress your fucking friend who's trying to stump me. But yes, sensor size does make a difference in depth of field. It also makes a difference in noise in low light. There's also it's subjective, because it's like a factor of also how many megapixels in the sensor by its size. So basically, the more megapixels you try to cram on the sensor, you're kind of giving up image quality just to have a higher resolution photo, which is why sometimes more megapixels doesn't mean better images. But right now in 2020, where we're standing, camera sensors are pretty amazing. They're only going to get better. So like, the image quality is good. There are enough megapixels to print your images pretty much whatever size you want, and still have them look great. So these are like pixel peeper type conversations that I usually don't enjoy having, but hopefully I've earned my cred by like letting you know that I do research. I do look at these things. I just don't give a shit about them. So I'm smart enough to know them. Too cool to care.
There you go. I understood the second half of your answer. The first half I didn't, but I'm assuming that's because that's why it was supposed to be a stump question. It wasn't supposed to be something that I can understand. I think I
probably didn't explain it the best. I can probably look for. I can probably.
Like you said, you don't care though. You don't.
Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah,
but I don't want your friend to think I know, so yeah, out of spite, I will research this.
I will write a paper.
Yeah.
I will publish a paper on this to show that I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so on the flip side, my 9-year-old daughter had a question. Hopefully a little easier to answer. Is it better to have a big camera or a small camera?
Okay, and I think that's a great question. Like I said, when I use my Fujifilm cameras, they're compact. They're sorry, I think I said that a little too French. I'm from Montreal. They're compact, so they're a bit smaller, and that's what I like about them. Sometimes I'm at a wedding. If I'm starting with the bride's makeup getting done at like 9:30, 10 in the morning, and then I'm at this party, and the party is wild, I'm having a lot of fun, and I end up staying till 3 in the morning, shutting down the place, that's 18 hours of photography. I do not want two heavy Canons on either side of me with these huge glass lenses killing my back, because I can't do my job properly if I'm not feeling well physically. Whereas when I'm using my Fujifilm, which are a lot more portable, I find I can move around easier. I'm still enjoying picking up a camera, no matter the time. So for me, just like the physical difference of the device makes a huge difference. There are obviously trade-offs to having like a smaller or bigger camera. Like, a bigger camera generally has a bigger battery, and like the bigger the battery, the less you have to change batteries. Like when I was using Canon, I could use like 4 batteries for the day. I could shoot a whole wedding with maybe not even having to change batteries and still taking, upwards of, 10,000 images between two bodies. Whereas with Fujifilm, my bag has 30 batteries in it.
Wow.
Yeah. Each camera takes 3 batteries at a time, like one in the camera body and 2 in like the grip. That kind of just extends the size of the camera, so I can hold it better in my hands. I don't use 30 batteries, but like one of the things that keeps me up at night is like worrying, like, did I charge enough batteries? Do I have enough? I always worry about running out of batteries in my flash or my camera. And also running out of memory. So I always bring enough memory and batteries to last me for 4 weddings, every wedding I go to. And it eases my anxiety about things. I'm not an anxious person to begin with, but if I have solved these problems before they even arise, like it's just something I don't have to worry about. It's never in the back of my mind. I don't have to take a picture and like go through my camera, like deleting photos out of it just because like I need to, save space on a memory card or like worry about batteries. But yes, it is annoying to switch that often, but it's a choice that I made. Like I'm willing to make the sacrifice of being annoyed by batteries in order to have like smaller, lighter cameras. You also with smaller cameras, you don't get as much depth of field. So for instance, like when we're talking about those like creamy, buttery backgrounds that like make photos look professional, Fujifilm cameras have smaller sensors. So you usually don't, get that creaminess like you would with a medium format camera or like one of these big Canons or Nikons with the nice lens. Actually, Sony cameras have those big sensors with the bigger lenses. The bigger the sensor, usually the bigger the lens needs to be. That's just like a physics aspect of it. So keeping a smaller sensor lets you use those smaller lenses. My personal thoughts about that is that like I don't like to use depth of field as a crutch. I know I sent you a picture before and you went, oh, like bokeh. So like you can see that my cameras are still able to give you that effect. It's just not as pronounced. I like to rely more on like composition and more of like looking for like key moments and like interesting ways of interesting angles using background elements. So like I'm not trying to like blur out everything. I still want to have context to the image. Otherwise, like it's just like, oh, here's a head with some blurry green stuff in the background. Here's someone's face, but there's like blurry bricks in the background. Or like, oh, here's someone and like the sky is, in the background. If there was something there, it would be blurry. So like it's fun to do, but it's not, for me, it's not like, like saying something with your image. So like, yes, the bokeh isn't good, but throw some shade. But if you rely on bokeh as a crutch, you're not a good photographer and you should quit. And you should refer all your clients to come to me.
But Instagram loves it.
Instagram does love it, but
I don't want to get off topic, but I'm going to. You know who MKBHD is? The YouTuber who does smartphone reviews and stuff?
No.
Okay. He does smartphone reviews, and I think every year he does a review on smartphone cameras.
Okay.
And he does this blind test that he does on Instagram, I believe, and he has people vote on it. Mm-hmm. And last year, I think when he did the test, he realized people were picking the one with the more bokeh in it, or more blurred background, I guess, whatever effect it was. Right. And people were voting on that one the most, regardless of what the image looked like, regardless of how the colors looked or how, the quality. Yeah. They were going specifically because of the blurred background. And I was like, wow. It's like, that's kind of telling, of what consumers want.
It's an interesting, but these were photos displayed on Instagram, right?
Yeah. And that was the target audience was, they want the bokeh.
What's the most famous image you can think of when someone says photography or like captured moment? What's the image that comes to your mind?
Oh wow.
Just think of like a famous photo.
That Marilyn Monroe where she's like standing over the grate.
Right. What can you tell me about the bokeh in it?
I have no clue.
So you have no idea. Like
I can't picture the background. I picture her like standing there.
Okay, so
not a fetish or anything like that. Just
it's all good. It's a famous image. The one I always think of when I bring that up, it's always like the end of the war, like the girl kissing the sailor.
Ah,
Another one is also like the guy sitting on the construction beam eating their lunch,
yeah.
or like Tiananmen Square, or
What kind
or
of, wow.
what was his name? The the Munich Olympics, the runner
I
holding his hand up,
I cannot picture it right now.
Jesse Owens,
Ah,
when he won the Olympics in Germany, as a black man, and like like those are powerful images, and like, so for instance, that photo of Marilyn Monroe, it's an extremely famous photograph. I've seen it many times. Like, you can see another like photographer, there's like people in the background of the image,
mm-hmm.
right? They're like crystal clear.
I'm looking it up now.
Yeah, pull it up. There's people in the background, or they're crystal clear. There's like, it's not even cropped well. There's like something in the corner, like it's either the side of a building or something. But for you, it's like, when you think of photography, like, that's the image that you thought of. And when you if you want to criticize it, you can criticize it. Like, there are elements to criticize, but like, in the end, like, it's an amazing subject, an amazing moment, and it's well lit, so you have an amazing photograph. So like, whereas if you're just like, oh, Instagram, here's a pretty girl, look, the background's blurry. Oh, look, we're gonna add some like colors, so like there's some like cyan in the shadows. And like, don't get me wrong, everyone likes to look at photos of attractive people, but maybe in 30 years you're going to go, oh, what was the best picture you ever saw? You're not going to be like, oh, that famous YouTuber ABCD had that contest, and like, yeah, like, it was the background was just so blurry, I remember the photo forever. Like, you're not, if I asked you, oh, can you remember like anything about the photo, you're like, no, it's just, I clicked it was blurry. So it's kind of like, what's the best meal you ever had? Like, was it like a McDonald's burger, like, or like McNuggets that were like, seemed like the best idea when you were high? Or like, can you think of like an actual like well-crafted meal that like you've had it like with a amazing chef one time?
Wow, yeah, that is a very interesting take on that. That's, wow.
Yeah,
I was just trying to
Marcus. Fuck you, Marcus, and your poll.
I was trying to make like a witty observation here, like, no, let's deep dive into this. I'm like, okay, we're going down this hole.
Sorry.
No, that's
foils.
That's what this podcast is about. So,
right. Oh, hold on, but let me finish the question. That like, we were still talking about, is it better to have a big camera or a small camera?
oh yeah, I completely forgot about that question. That's what we were talking about.
So as I said, like everything has a trade-off, and that's not just like photography advice. That's actually, well, that's pretty much what I learned from my biology degree. If you want a biology degree, I'm going to teach you biology right now. Everything has a trade-off. You want to be a big animal, you got to eat more food. You got to spend more time looking for food. That's the trade-off. So everything in life has a trade-off. Like, you want to go to school for a long time, well, you need to work hard and make money. You're going to spend more of your time studying, etc. So like, if like having a bigger camera has its advantages, you're trading off like comfort, etc. Having a smaller camera also. What's important, what I really like about my Fujifilm, is they're not intimidating to my subjects.
Ooh, I didn't even think of that.
So that's another important trade-off, and it's something I didn't consider when I bought them. I was like, oh, the colors are cool, like, I like it, it looks retro. I'm a bit of a hipster doofus, so like, it kind of fits that. They look like old film cameras, but they're like, pretty high tech. But what I noticed is, like, you don't have this huge zoom lens like in your face. You can't, sometimes people don't even realize I'm taking a picture. I'm just like holding this small, black box up to my eye, click, like the shutter is completely silent, which is why I love mirrorless cameras. I can be pretty sneaky with them. So when I'm taking a portrait of someone, it's not as obvious. It's not as aware. Like, even obviously they're aware I'm taking a portrait of them, but if I'm sitting down, I'm having a conversation with them and clicking in the middle, it's not the same thing as like, okay, I'm aiming my camera at you now. It's like, you can't see my face even. All you can see is like this huge, lens protruding and like jabbing at you, and like now I'm going to press this button. It's like this huge deafening click. So I think and especially in like my line of work where I'm really trying to put people at ease and coax them into giving me, different expressions and drawing that out of them, that for me a smaller camera allows me to do more of that and use more of myself to create the image I want out of interacting with my subject, rather than like having this huge instrument that can kind of obscure that. So is it better to have a big camera or a small camera? It depends what you're trying to do. Or in another way, I use smaller cameras. I'm better, therefore small cameras are better.
For you.
Yeah, but also.
I was going to say, if you have a big camera, then you can get a tripod, but that's like anti everything you've already said.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. And I mean, but like, let's say you're doing bird photography, which is a huge application in photography. And I don't know anything about like photographing birds, but they're small, they're fast, they're, they can be in like a variety of places. So for instance, like you want a big megapixel camera, you have to be able to crop your photos, because sometimes like the bird is, 500 meters away, and you have to be ready to like take a picture of that bird. And like, if it's, small, like you need to crop to get a usable image. So like you want a bigger camera, you want something that like, you don't want to miss a moment by like switching batteries. You want to be able to put like a huge piece of glass on it. You want to use a tripod because you don't want wind or blurriness or like obviously the speed of the bird to do that. So like, for instance, like that's a type of photography that I know nothing about, that like probably everything I'll ever say in this podcast is wrong for. So yeah. So
it was interesting when you talked about the batteries. That never occurred to me. Like I know cameras use batteries, that makes sense, but like carrying 30 of them, just like that seems, I mean, at some point, wouldn't it be less weight to carry two full-size cameras, like too big?
But for instance, like when I'm at a wedding, I'm carrying them. I'll have 3 in each camera, and maybe 4 in my pocket.
Okay, so you're not carrying your bag with you.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. And then like the rest of them are like in my bag.
That makes more sense. Gotcha.
Which is either like sitting, in my car, or like at the venue. And like, cause kind of like weddings can be pretty methodical, where, okay, now we're doing the getting ready. Now we're doing portraits. Now we're doing the bridal party. Now we're doing the family. Now we're doing, now it's the ceremony. So like you have to know when's the best time to change them. And
gotcha.
that's something that's like totally experience related. I've been at this point to almost 400 weddings.
Wow.
So it's like, I'm like, I know I can change my battery now. And like, maybe my batteries aren't even empty, but I'm like, I'm just going to change them so I know they're full. I know it'll last me for the whole ceremony. Like, no problem. I don't even have to think about it. And then most of the reception following, like right after.
Wow. 400 weddings. And you said like 10,000 shots per wedding?
Yeah. 10 to 15,000 depends on the wedding.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. It's pretty.
I couldn't even like, if you told me, hey, guess how many pictures I've taken in my lifetime, I would have like ballparked it at like 50, 60,000. Like,
oh no.
Yeah, that's I was way like underestimating how many pictures you take a day or a week or a month.
I mean,
it's insane.
I read a story once about someone who was doing a shoot for Sports Illustrated, and they were out on a beach somewhere exotic. And I think they spent 2 full days taking photos. They took thousands and thousands of images of a model, and like they just weren't happy with the result. Like the photographer wasn't happy, so he just like redid the entire shoot, like just doubled the cost of it, like did it again another day until he was happy. And like so really, like, photo tip number 1, well, I don't know, I think I've dropped a bunch of them, but deliberate photo tip number 1, take more photos. Just always take more than you think you need. Sometimes people have a habit of like, hey, I'm going to take your picture now, and they go click, and okay, there's 4 people in the photo, maybe 2 of them are blinking at the time, it's crap. Whereas if you all of a sudden you do a burst of like 10, yes, you have 10 photos that you have to sort through, but maybe like one of those 10 like really stands out as the best one, and like grab it And like, you don't have to show anyone else the other 9. You just show them that one that's amazing. And they go, wow, like you're a great photographer. You really like captured that moment perfectly. You're like, yeah, I only took one.
It's actually funny you bring that
up.
So my brother-in-law, he does like amateur photography. He had a DSLR and everything, and he would just, just as a hobby, take pictures, of family events and stuff like that. Every time we give him our smartphones for like Christmas pictures and stuff like that, he always takes like a couple pictures at a time. He doesn't just do one picture. He takes a couple of them. And I was like, why'd you take so many? We're all in the same pose. He's like, pick the one you like the most. I was like, oh, yeah. And I never like thought of that. That is really interesting. Yeah,
that's definitely, it's a good tip. Take more photos than you need. When someone hands me their iPhone, I give them the burst and I'm like, here you go. And then they go like, what did you do? You took like 20 photos. I'm like, yeah, it's your fucking problem.
Delete the 19 you don't want.
Yeah, exactly.
That's wow.
Yeah. So, but that's also like the more people you have in a photo, the more you should take. Someone's going to blink and not like it, or someone's going to fix their hair in the middle or lick their lips. And then, and you can swap heads between photos in Photoshop, but it's really annoying. And it's like really like a last resort thing that you want to do. So just take more photos than you think you need. Memory cards are amazing these days.
Wow. Well, we had a few more things on the list, but we're going way past an hour at this point, I think. So
okay, yeah,
I'm going to save those for the next podcast. I think that's a really good, segment to go out on, that tip of take more photos than you need. That's that works both.
And you know what? And you don't need any gear to do that. So that's for anyone who enjoys images. Just take more than you think you need. And it's not about spray and pray, which is like, that's when you just like hold the shutter button down, you point it at a bunch of stuff, hope something comes out. But really, like, pick your moment. You think this is going to be a good image. Maybe there's a person or it's a thing or whatever. Just take a few, because maybe the first one you take might be out of focus for some reason. Then you take a bunch more. One of them seems sharper. That's obviously the one you want to use. You don't want to regret something once you're out of the scene. Whereas, especially when, like, let's say you're taking a picture of like your child and their grandparent. The child is running to the grandparent. Like, you're not like, oh, there's a great moment, click. But if you take your camera and you go click, 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 you'll get the child, mid-run, extending their arms, putting their arms around. Then when they bring them in, then when they hug, and then maybe the grandparent like closes their eyes just to get that extra little hug. And like, you have all these great moments that you can now, choose from, like, which is the one that gives you the, the most emotion.
And that's what photography is all about.
Well, photography is about showing them one of those images and being like, yeah, you like that. There's 5 more. It's going to cost you.
Okay. That's what photography is really about. But
well, for me.
But that's really good. I think that's a good place to end it.
Awesome.
For the 7 people that are listening to this and not outraged that I was commenting on wedding photographers earlier, thanks for continuing to listen. Everybody else, get in the comments, tell us how horrible people we are. That's fine. Marlon will reply to every single one of them.
It's fine. Yeah. Feel free to insult my voice. I agree with you.
I too hear his voice, and no, I'm joking.
Oh, good. I know who I am. If you disagree with me on anything photography related, feel free to let me know. I would love to ignore you.
He would love to do a thesis paper on it and explain why you are wrong.
Yeah, start your own podcast. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Yeah, and then we'll downvote that one too.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of power having this microphone.
I know. I don't want to end this podcast.
Yeah. Well, let's do it, and let's save some more for next time.
Sounds good. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Adios.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. I hope you learned something or got some good laughs out of it. Check us out at mandapod.com. MANDAPOD.com. Thanks again.